Cinema has always walked the thin line between art and provocation. Some films illuminate hidden truths, others unsettle because they refuse to play by the rules, and many, too dangerous or too bold, were silenced by governments, studios, or fear itself. Today we journey through 15 films they tried to bury, but couldn't. 1. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. The first image burns into memory, a glass of milk, cold and innocent, framed by the violent stare of Alex DeLarge. Kubrick's vision is drenched in neon menace, a future both surreal and disturbingly familiar. Malcolm McDowell plays the young delinquent with an eerie charisma, leading his gang through nights of ultraviolence and hollow laughter. Beneath the shocking brutality lies a meditation on free will, morality, and the fragile veneer of civilized society. Kubrick presents not heroes, but reflections, unsettling mirrors of a culture already spiraling into chaos. Released in 1971, the film sparked outrage across the United Kingdom. Newspapers blamed it for copycat crimes. Politicians fanned the flames of moral panic. Threats reached Kubrick's own home. The result was unprecedented. At the director's own request, the film was withdrawn from British cinemas for nearly 3 decades. A masterpiece locked away like contraband, available only on illicit VHS tapes passed hand to hand. When it returned in the 2000s, it felt less like a re-release and more like a rediscovery. A reminder that cinema, even in exile, continues to provoke, unsettle, and demand conversation. A Clockwork Orange still stands, both beautiful and terrifying, as proof that art cannot be silenced forever. 2. Roar, 1981. Picture a sunlit house in the African savannah. Lions pad through the halls as casually as house cats, their golden eyes flashing with primal unpredictability. This was no special effect, no trick of editing. It was reality, and it nearly destroyed everyone involved. Tippi Hedren, known for Hitchcock's The Birds, starred alongside her husband Noel Marshall and their children. But their co-stars were 150 untrained lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars. The production was chaos disguised as cinema. 70 crew members were injured, mauled, or scarred, their bloodied encounters captured and left in the final cut. Filmed throughout the 1970s, Roar was envisioned as a message about wildlife preservation. Instead, it became the most dangerous movie ever made. Studios refused to handle it. Insurance companies fled. Its release was a financial catastrophe, buried almost immediately. And yet, watching it today is to witness something surreal. A cinematic experiment, both reckless and mesmerizing. It feels less like narrative and more like raw footage of man colliding with nature's untamed force. For decades, the film was whispered about, a rumor more than a reality. Its belated Blu-ray release finally brought it into the light. Roar endures, not because it is a polished film, but because it stands as a testament to obsession, danger, and the thin line between art and madness. 3. Natural-Born Killers, 1994. The desert stretches out like a fever dream. 2 young lovers, Mickey and Mallory Knox, dance through a trail of blood and fire, their love story written in bullets. Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis embody chaos incarnate, guided by Oliver Stone's unflinching direction and Quentin Tarantino's early script. Released in 1994, Natural-Born Killers was never just a film. It was a provocation. Its hyper-stylized violence and satirical attacks on media obsession made it both revolutionary and reviled. Critics split violently. Some praised it as visionary, others damned it as dangerous. Soon, reality blurred with fiction. Crimes eerily similar to those in the film were splashed across headlines. Lawsuits followed, accusing Stone of inspiring murder. Though courts dismissed the claims, the whispers persisted. In Ireland, the government banned the film outright. In the UK and France, it became a symbol of corrupted youth. But time has a way of clarifying what outrage obscures. What was once dismissed as reckless now feels prophetic. Stone's film predicted a culture of sensationalized violence, where tragedy is packaged as entertainment. Today, its imagery still feels uncomfortably close to the world we inhabit. Natural-Born Killers remains a film they tried to silence, but like its protagonists, it refuses to fade quietly. It demands to be seen, not as instruction, but as indictment. 4. Zero. Dark 30, 2012. A dark room, a hooded prisoner, the sound of water pouring, of breath breaking under torture. This was not a horror film. It was Catherine Bigelow's Zero Dark 30, a dramatization of the decade-long hunt for Osama bin Laden. Jessica Chastain plays Maya, a CIA operative consumed by obsession. Her journey is painted not with triumph, but with unease. Every lead, every interrogation, drips with moral ambiguity. The film doesn't flinch from showing enhanced interrogation techniques, a euphemism the government wanted forgotten. Released in 2012, the film was embraced by critics, earning multiple Oscar nominations. Yet, behind the curtains, whispers grew louder. Senators denounced it. The CIA quietly pressured studios, fearing it revealed too much or portrayed too honestly. Awards campaigns were quietly pulled back. Its theatrical life was shadowed by political unease. And yet, in its restraint lies its power. It refuses simple answers. It presents not patriotism, but questions. At what cost is victory won? How blurred can morality become before it is lost entirely? In time, Zero Dark 30 may be remembered less as a war film and more as a mirror, a reminder that truth is uncomfortable, and that even in the age of transparency, cinema can still show us what we would rather not see. 5. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. A jungle, humid and unrelenting. The camera pushes through vines and shadow until it finds a village, silent and watching. What unfolds is not fiction in the traditional sense, but something so raw it convinced many it must be real. Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust remains one of the most infamous films ever created. The story follows a documentary crew who disappear in the Amazon while filming indigenous tribes. When their footage is discovered, what the world sees is carnage, brutal violence, shocking cruelty, and unsettlingly real depictions of death. The line between reality and staged artifice was blurred so convincingly that Italian authorities seized the film. Convinced Deodato had directed an actual snuff movie. He was arrested, and the actors were forced to appear in court to prove they were still alive. While the charges were dropped, the film's legacy was forever tainted. Banned in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and multiple other countries, Cannibal Holocaust became shorthand for cinematic taboo. What truly damned it, however, was its treatment of animals. Scenes of real animal deaths pushed critics, activists, and audiences to condemn it outright. And yet, buried beneath its exploitation lies a dark mirror. The film critiques Western media's appetite for sensationalism, showing how journalists manipulate violence for spectacle. That irony, a film condemned for violence while satirizing the consumption of violence, makes its place in history complex, uneasy, but unforgettable. Today, Cannibal Holocaust is still banned in some countries. For those who do encounter it, the film lingers not just as grotesque imagery, but as a haunting question. How far should cinema go to reveal our darkest truths? 6. The Insider, 1999. The screen opens not with violence, but silence, the quiet hum of a corporate boardroom, the stifled air of secrets never meant to escape. In Michael Mann's The Insider, Russell Crowe plays Jeffrey Wigand, a scientist who risked everything to expose Big Tobacco's hidden knowledge about addiction and cancer. Crowe's Wigand is fragile, yet unyielding. Opposite him, Al Pacino portrays Lowell Bergman, a journalist determined to bring the truth to air. Their bond is not built on friendship, but shared principle, the belief that truth matters, even when it destroys lives. Released in 1999, the film was critically acclaimed, nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and yet, its theatrical life was curiously muted. Marketing was minimized. Studios seemed reluctant to push too hard. Behind the scenes, whispers suggested that tobacco companies' influence lingered even over Hollywood. Their power enough to intimidate distributors into restraint. The Insider is a slow burn, but its impact resonates like thunder. It shows not physical danger, but psychological toll, the unraveling of a man under threats, lawsuits, and corporate intimidation. In the end, it is not about victory, but sacrifice. A man loses his livelihood to tell the truth, and the system only bends, never fully breaking. Though it didn't ignite the box office, The Insider remains one of man's finest works, its relevance sharpened by time. In an age where whistleblowers still face intimidation, the film's silence feels louder than ever. It wasn't banned outright, but it was buried in subtler ways, drowned in quiet suppression, reminding us that sometimes censorship doesn't shout. It whispers. 7. The Brave, 1997. A carnival fades into the background. Dust swirls, shadows lengthen, and at the center stands a man faced with the ultimate bargain. His life for his family's future. This was The Brave, Johnny Depp's first and only directorial effort, and one of the rarest modern films never given a wide release. Depp cast himself as Raphael, a Native American man drowning in poverty. Marlon Brando, in one of his final roles, plays the sinister man who offers Raphael money in exchange for agreeing to die on camera. The premise alone was bleak, the execution unflinching. Premiering at the Cannes Film Festival in 1997, the reaction was disastrous. Critics called it unmarketable, unbearable, too heavy to find an audience. Depp, wounded by the reception, withdrew the film entirely. It has never received an official U.S. release, existing only in bootlegs and whispers among cinephiles. What makes The Brave significant is not just its rarity, but its honesty. It strips away Hollywood glamour to reveal despair, exploitation, and the way desperation pushes people into impossible corners. Brando's haunting presence only deepens its weight, lending it the gravity of a final farewell. Today, the film remains hidden. Not by governments, but by choice. Depp himself admitted it was too sad to sell, and yet, those who have seen it recognize its courage. It is cinema as raw confession, a story that refuses to comfort. The Brave is not forgotten. It is waiting, buried under silence, daring those who find it to look. 8. Dead Alive, 1992. A lawnmower roars, blood sprays like a crimson tide, limbs fly, faces twist, and the grotesque turns into comedy so outrageous it borders on surreal. This was Peter Jackson before The Lord of the Rings. This was Dead Alive, or Brain Dead, as it was known outside the U.S., released in 1992. The film tells the story of Lionel, a timid young man whose domineering mother is bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey. What follows is not horror in the traditional sense, but horror amplified into slapstick. Zombies multiply. Gore explodes across the screen. But every dismemberment, every geyser of blood, is played for laughs. The audacity was too much for censors. In the U.S., nearly 15 minutes of gore were cut. Entire sequences vanished. In some countries, the film was banned outright. Even in New Zealand, where Jackson filmed it, audiences were stunned by its excess. Critics were baffled. Was it art or madness dressed as comedy? Time has since answered. Dead Alive is celebrated as one of the greatest splatter films ever made, a benchmark in practical effects and absurdist storytelling. Its influence on horror comedy is immeasurable, inspiring filmmakers to push boundaries without apology. And yet, copies remain scarce. The film drifts in and out of circulation, rarely appearing on streaming platforms. Like a forbidden treasure, it surfaces in unexpected places: grainy DVDs, YouTube uploads, late-night screenings. Watching it today feels almost rebellious, as if sharing in a secret. For Jackson, it was a stepping stone. For cinema, it was proof that gore could transcend disgust, becoming spectacle, laughter, and art all at once. Dead Alive was never meant to be silenced, but they tried anyway. 9. The Last Temptation of Christ, 1988. A barren desert, a man walks alone, burdened by destiny. His name is Jesus, portrayed by Willem Dafoe with weary humanity. Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ was not blasphemy, but empathy. a reimagining of Christ's final hours, asking what it meant for divinity to carry human doubt. The film is reverent in its scope, drawing heavily from Scripture. Yet, at its climax, it dares to imagine an alternate path. It is this boldness, this questioning, that sparked fury. Religious groups around the world condemned it before even seeing it. In Paris, extremists hurled Molotov cocktails into a theater, injuring 13 people. In other countries, bans fell swiftly. Released in 1988, the film struggled against waves of outrage. Studio executives faced protests. Politicians thundered against it. For Scorsese, it was a deeply personal work, decades in the making, almost torn from him by censorship and fear. Seen today, it is not scandalous, but meditative. A work of faith and imagination, grappling with the weight of sacrifice. Defoe's performance is haunting, supported by Paul Schrader's script and Peter Gabriel's ethereal score. Its legacy is one of misunderstanding, a film punished not for what it was, but for what people feared it might be. Scorsese endured the fire, and the film survived. It stands as a reminder that art and faith need not be enemies, and that questions, however uncomfortable, can bring us closer to truth. 10. The Thief and the Cobbler, 1993, unfinished. A vast kingdom painted in gold and blue. Towers stretch like dreams, carpets ripple through the air, and soldiers march in intricate hypnotic rhythm. This was Richard Williams' The Thief and the Cobbler, a film 30 years in the making, a masterpiece of animation that was never allowed to be finished. Williams, best known as the animation director of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, poured his life into this project. The story was simple: a humble cobbler and a silent thief caught in a battle between good and evil. But the animation was anything but simple. Each frame was crafted with obsessive precision. Scenes flowed with impossible fluidity, like living art unbound by gravity. Then came disaster. In the early 90s, desperate to compete with Disney's Aladdin, the studio wrested the film away from Williams. Sequences were hacked apart. Cheap songs and celebrity voices were inserted. The final release was incoherent, a shadow of what could have been. Critics dismissed it, and audiences forgot it, but the vision did not die. Fans pieced together work prints and unfinished reels, circulating them online. The recobbled cut now exists, stitched together like a restoration of a cathedral from its ruins. Watching it is both breathtaking and heartbreaking, a glimpse into what animation might have been had corporate fear not intervened. The Thief and the Cobbler endures not as a complete film, but as a monument to the tragedy of compromised art. A film sabotaged, yet still unforgettable. 11. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. The opening frame is deceptively quiet. Young faces, pale with fear, march into a villa. Behind them, men in uniform smile coldly. What follows is one of the most harrowing visions ever captured on film. Pier Paolo Pasolini's Salo is not entertainment, it is accusation. Loosely based on the writings of the Marquis de Sade, the film transposes the story to fascist Italy during World War II. 4 powerful men imprison a group of youths and subject them to unspeakable abuse. Pasolini was not seeking thrills, but a mirror, exposing the cruelty of power, the degradation of bodies, and the corruption of innocence. From the moment of its release in 1975, outrage followed. The film was banned in Italy, in the UK, in Australia, and beyond. Prints were seized, screenings were raided. To many, it was obscene. To others, it was too dangerous to be shown. Pasolini himself was murdered shortly after completing it, fueling the aura of darkness surrounding the work. Was it art or atrocity? That question still divides viewers today. And yet, for all its horror, Salo remains essential. It does not glamorize violence, it indicts it. It forces audiences to confront the reality of power unchecked, of humanity stripped bare. It is cinema as a wound, still bleeding, still raw. 12. Pink Flamingos, 1972. A trailer on the outskirts of Baltimore. A drag queen in a red gown struts defiantly, declaring herself the filthiest person alive. With that, John Waters' Pink Flamingos explodes onto the screen, an underground classic so shocking that censors across the globe tried to smother it. Starring the legendary Divine, the film revels in transgression. It is vulgar, outrageous, and deliberately offensive, a challenge hurled at polite society. Waters shot it on a shoestring budget, gathering friends, misfits, and outsiders to create something no studio would dare touch. Upon release in 1972, the reaction was instant. Some critics hailed it as anarchic genius. Others called it pornography. In Australia and parts of Canada, it was outright banned. Even in the US, screenings were raided, reels confiscated. For decades, it survived only in midnight shows, whispered about like contraband. But within its filth is freedom. Pink Flamingos is not about shock for its own sake. It is about identity, about outsiders reclaiming space in a world that rejected them. Divine's performance is both grotesque and glorious, transforming camp into a weapon. Today, Waters is celebrated as a cult icon, and Pink Flamingos is recognized as a landmark of queer cinema. What was once silenced now sings defiantly that art belongs to everyone, even and especially those society deems unworthy. 13. Once Upon a Time in America, 1984. A slow dissolve. The sound of a ringing telephone echoes across decades, weaving memory and regret into the life of one man. Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America was not just a gangster film. It was a requiem for lost time. Starring Robert De Niro and James Woods, the film follows a group of friends from their youth in New York's Jewish ghettos through the violent rise of organized crime. Its heart is not in the heists, but in the bonds of friendship, betrayal, and the corrosive effects of ambition. Leone envisioned a 4-hour epic, a tapestry of memory told through non-linear fragments. But when the film was released in 1984, the studio panicked. They hacked it down to barely 2 hours, rearranged scenes chronologically, and stripped away its soul. Critics mocked it. Audiences stayed away. Leone, heartbroken, never directed another film. Years later, the full version resurfaced. Restored to its intended length, it revealed itself as a masterpiece, a meditation on memory, identity, and the impossibility of recapturing the past. What was once dismissed is now revered. Once Upon a Time in America stands as a cautionary tale. Even great art can be mutilated by fear, but time, patient and relentless, restores what panic destroys. 14. Triumph of the Will, 1935. The camera rises above a mass of banners, soldiers, and fire. A single figure emerges, saluted by thousands. This was Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will, perhaps the most dangerous film ever made, not because of gore or obscenity, but because of beauty used in service of tyranny. Commissioned by Adolf Hitler to document the 1934 Nazi Party Congress, the film turned propaganda into spectacle. Riefenstahl's pioneering cinematography, sweeping cranes, precise edits, monumental compositions, transformed political rallies into visual symphonies. But its artistry cloaked its purpose. It glorified dictatorship. It mythologized hate. To watch it was to witness cinema's power to shape minds. After the war, the film was banned or heavily restricted in many countries. Scholars debated whether it should ever be shown. Was it history or poison? Could one admire its craft without absorbing its message? Today it survives mainly as an object of study, taught in film schools as both a warning and a lesson. Triumph of the Will is proof that cinema is not inherently moral. It is a tool. In the wrong hands, it becomes weapon. 15. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. A dusty road. The whine of a chainsaw cutting through silence. A family's dinner table turned into a stage of terror. Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was raw, unpolished, and unforgettable. Released in 1974, it told the story of a group of friends stumbling into the clutches of Leatherface and his cannibalistic family. Shot on a shoestring budget, it looked almost like documentary footage, too real, too close. That realism shocked audiences. Critics called it sadistic. Parents called it dangerous. Bans spread across the UK, Australia, and parts of Europe. Even where it played, theaters often cut scenes or pulled it after protests. Yet, despite efforts to silence it, the film became a sensation. Word of mouth spread. Audiences flocked to feel its terror. What makes Texas Chainsaw endure is not gore. In fact, much of it is implied, but atmosphere, the sweat, the heat, the claustrophobia, the horror of decay. It feels less like a movie and more like a nightmare you cannot wake from. Nearly 50 years later, it remains one of the most influential horror films ever made, shaping the genre for generations. Banned, censored, reviled, and yet immortal. Cinema has always provoked fear, not just on screen, but in those who wish to control it. These films, scarred by bans and protests, survive because stories cannot be buried forever. Each is a reminder that art endures, even when silenced. Subscribe, like, and join us again for more forgotten treasures of the screen.